picture in there. Put your address in there. Maybe the kids can write you back, but we need you to be a part of it. God bless you. Thank you so very much.
Visit SamaritansPurse.org/OCC to get involved.
Are you aware that there's a perception?
I see no.
Are you aware that there's a perception?
That puts ICE in the same category as the KKK.
Despite the framing of the Caravan as being full of women and children, the reality on the ground is quite different. Approximately 90 to 95% of the migrants were male. When you see a photo in the New York Times, the Washington Post, or a video in CNN or the BBC or MSNBC, what do you see? You see the entire framing are women and children.
We are all children of God. We are born with God. We are all created equal by our Creator, and we are given equal rights to life, liberty, and to pursue happiness. That is our national identity. We should be proud of that identity.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy and welcome to this free-for-all Friday edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. We'll be opening up the phones. Going into the second segment, we'll take phone calls from the second segment through the rest of the hour. So you might want to make a note of the number. It's 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Talk about anything that's been in the news this past week. You've got the immigration issue with the Caravan. You have the election recounts, the other kind of issues in Florida and Georgia. You have Jim Acosta demanding to get his press pass back and a judge agreeing with him. All kind of stuff that's been in the news this week. Anything that's been in the news, we'll be happy to take your call on that. 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. And again, we will take your calls in the second segment, starting then and going through the rest of the program. By the way, no Focal Point overtime today. No Focal Point overtime today.
I'm just making the noise for some of the people in the
like yeah. Jeff watches it every day. So no. We'll resume on Monday. No, we won't. A programming note. I'm going to be taking some time off next week. So I won't be back in front of the Focal Point microphone until the following Monday. So I will be off starting on Monday through Thanksgiving, back on Monday. I see that hand, Jeffrey.
Yeah, question in the back here. Will you be doing Facebook overtime on your time
on my
off?
Vacation?
Yeah.
No, I was going to have you do that. So,
okay.
So Jeff will be happy to step in.
No, I'm going to be on vacation too.
That's right. He's gone too. So yeah. You guys are on your own. So. Anyway, we'll get back into the saddle a week from Monday. Now, I want to talk today a little bit about how to understand pain and suffering, get a big picture of pain and suffering. And the writer of Lamentations, whom I believe to be Jeremiah, gives us some amazing verses in Lamentations chapter 3 about the issue of pain and suffering. And what Jeremiah talks about in the early part of the chapter is he clearly understands who's the one who's made his life difficult. God is the one, he says, who has made my life difficult. He has driven me and bought me. He has made my flesh and my skin waste away. He has broken my bones. He has besieged and enveloped me. He has made me dwell in darkness. He has walled me about. He has made my chains heavy. He shuts out my prayer. I'd gone through a period of time where things were bad. He tried to connect with God through prayer, and it wasn't working. He wasn't hooking up with God. He wasn't connecting with God. He wasn't hearing from God through his prayers. He has blocked my ways. He is a bear lying in wait. He turned aside my steps. He has made me desolate. He bent his bow. He drove into my kidneys the arrows of his quiver. He has filled me with bitterness. He has sated me with wormwood. He has made my teeth grind on gravel. My soul, he says, is bereft of peace. I have forgotten what happiness is. You ever been in a situation like that where things are just so bad, everything around you, you can't even remember what it was like to be happy. You can't remember the last time you were happy. That's where Jeremiah was. And Jeremiah says, my endurance has perished, and so has my hope from the Lord. In other words, Jeremiah was right on the edge of just giving up, right on the edge of just completely throwing in the towel. His endurance, he says, has perished. I just can't do it another day. That's where Jeremiah was at. So if you've been there, Jeremiah can identify with you. But then he says this in verse 20, my soul continually remembers it, the period of heartache and trouble, and is bowed down within me. But, in verse 21, but this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. So this is where his whole life began to turn around, when he stopped and began to focus and begin to affirm. In other words, he began to talk to himself instead of to listen to himself. That's what we do. We have all this grumbling and groaning and whining and whimpering and moaning going on inside us, and we start listening to those voices chattering at us. And what Jeremiah is saying, what I learned, what I had to do to get out of that pit, I had to start talking to myself. I had to start affirming the Word of God over my life. And affirming, for instance, the verse that says the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. So once he started affirming that, then things began to open up for him. The Lord is good, verse 25, to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for a man that he bear the yoke in his youth. So he says, it is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. So we can be in just a really bad place. Jeremiah is in a really bad place. And he says, one of the things I need to learn, rather than getting all anxious, rather than get all worked up and bent out of shape and get my heart rate up and feeling filled with anxiety, instead of doing that, I decided to wait quietly before the Lord. What I would encourage you to do is spend some time every day in the morning before you get your day started. I'm learning to do that all over again. Spend some time quietly waiting before the Lord by spending time resting and soaking in the Word of God. You can use the reading schedule we have at pray.afa.net. That's what I do. Debbie uses the same schedule. She's at a little different place in the schedule, but uses the same exact one. So wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. And here's why. He says in verse 31, the Lord will not cast off forever. Though he causes grief, he will have compassion according to the abundance of his steadfast love. So God is the source of our grief, but he is also the source of our healing. So our pain and our healing ultimately come from the same place, from God and his sovereignty. You know, if we think things are out of control, that somebody besides God is running things, then when we feel grief, we think everybody but God is to blame. But what Jeremiah says, the Lord causes grief, but he also is the one that brings compassion. He says in verse 33, he does not willingly afflict or grieve the children of men. So he's not a sadist. He doesn't do this willingly. He doesn't do it because he likes it. But what Jeremiah's point is, there's nothing arbitrary about our pain, the pain that God brings into our life, the pain that God allows, however you want to describe it. There is something purposeful about that. There is nothing arbitrary there is nothing happenstance about our pain and about our suffering. There is always a purpose in it. God always has a plan for it. He always has a purpose. It's always accomplishing something that's important in His plan for your life and for my life. You know, it's like you have cancer, you go to a doctor, and he says, well, in order to save you, in order to get you where you want to be, I'm going to have to inflict a whole lot of pain on you. I'm going to have to take biopsies. That's going to hurt like crazy. I'm going to have to do invasive surgery, cut you open in 5 places. You're going to have weeks of recovery. That's not going to be fun. So in order to help you, I have to hurt you. So the pain that a surgeon inflicts is purposeful. He has a reason for it. He might have to inflict a considerable degree of pain, but we need it in order to be healed. So God is like that surgeon. He never inflicts pain on us that we don't need for our growth and for our maturity. I repeat, God never inflicts pain on us that we do not need for our growth or for our maturity. Well, let's take these things to the Lord, if you'd be kind enough to join me in prayer. Lord God, I pray this day for myself. I pray for my family. I pray for the listening audience of Focal Point, every man, woman, and child within the sound of my voice right now. I pray for all of our elected officials across this land and for our president, President Trump. And I pray for those times when it seems to us as though you have turned your hand against us, that you have besieged us and surrounded us with hardship. There may be days when we feel that you have walled us in so that we cannot escape and weighed us down with heavy chains. It may seem as though you have barred our way with blocks of stone and shut out our prayer even when we call to you for help. Remind us it is from your mouth as the Most High that both good and bad come. We know that you do not willingly afflict or grieve the children of men, so we know that our pain has a purpose. We accept your truth that it is good for us to bear the yoke when we are young. When others do wrong to us and taunt us and even plot against us, I pray that you will take up our cause and be our judge. When they seek vengeance against us and their lips and thoughts are against us, please redeem our life and repay them for the work of their hands. When our soul is downcast within us, I pray that we will call to mind that it is only because of your great love that we are not consumed. Grant us hope by reminding us through your Spirit that your compassions never fail. Please show us new mercies every morning and demonstrate to us your great faithfulness. I pray that we will call on your name from the depths of the pit, and that you will not close your ears to our cry for relief. Please come near to us when we call you. Release us from all fear and uphold our cause. May we examine our ways and test them, and lift up our hearts and our hands to you in repentance for sin. I pray that you will be our portion and that we will choose to wait for you. I pray that you will be good to us when we hope in you and seek you. Teach us to wait quietly for your salvation. Reassure us that you do not cast men off forever, and that even though you bring grief to us, you will once again show compassion according to your great and unfailing love. I ask these things in the name of Jesus. Amen. Okay, well, let's see if we can get a couple items in here before we get to the break, the first break. I've mentioned this before, but today's the day where representatives from 60 nations are going to convene in Versailles, France, to approve a new definition for the kilogram. Talked about this before, but since the 19th century, scientists have based their definition of a kilogram on a platinum iridium cylinder stored in a vault at the International Bureau of Weights and Measures. I mean, it is the kilogram. That's it. You want to know what a kilogram is? That's it. It's always a kilogram. If it gains weight because of pollution, if it loses weight because it gets cleaned, it is still the only official kilogram in the universe. So they're going to try to set it now. They're going to try to tie it to Planck's constant, develop a mathematical formula for what the kilogram is. I, for one, am sorry to see it go. We'll be right back.
Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb a reward. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. In the course of my New Orleans Saints putting a beat down on the Los Angeles Rams, quarterback Drew Brees threw a touchdown pass to tight end Benjamin Watson. Watson is passionately pro-life. He addressed the 2018 March for Life in Washington, D.C., and has purchased ultrasound machines for pregnancy resource centers around the country. During the game, Watson celebrated his touchdown by announcing to the world that he and his wife were expecting twins. The twins are the Watsons' 6th and 7th children. Children are blessings from the Lord. Who dat?
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Dr. Richard Land, President of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. In the whirlwind of news stories, both foreign and domestic, in the past fortnight, one anniversary that should have garnered more attention than it did was not remarked upon as it should have been. The 101st anniversary of the birth of communism, November 7th, 1917, in Russia. In the little more than a century since then, communist governments in Russia, China, occupied Eastern Europe, Vietnam, North Korea, and Cambodia have been responsible for the deaths of at least 100 million people. Starting with Lenin and Stalin, they massacred and starved to death millions of people in the 1920s and the 1930s. The Soviet system of concentration camps, known as the Gulag Archipelago, imprisoned, tortured, and killed millions of people who refused to accept the brutal totalitarian dictatorships of Lenin, Stalin, and Khrushchev. In 1949, the communists took over the most populous country in the world, China, and it is estimated that within 2 years, they may have killed or eliminated as many as 50 million people. As we look back on the 101 years of communist governments, the butcher's bill is horrendous, and it always will be so with communism. Among other things, communism subordinates the good of the individual to the supposed good of the state, which leads to terrible crimes against real people. And yet, in a recent poll, over 40% of American millennials wish they had lived in a socialist country. That statement itself is a vibrant testimony to the abject failure of our educational system. Whatever the question is, communism and its paler cousin socialism are never the answers. An old but tried truth is that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. In communist governments, they have absolute power, and it corrupts absolutely. The Bible tells us that the heart of man is deceitful and desperately wicked. Who can know it? That's why communism never has and never will work. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Free for All Friday. Talk about anything that's on your mind. Anything that's been in the news over the course of this past week. So it's wide open. We're running wide open on all lanes today. So the number to call if you want to join the conversation, we'll be taking calls from now through the rest of the hour. If you'd like to join the conversation, 888-589-8840 is the number to call. Give us a buzz right now at 888-589-8840. Let's go to David in Texas to kick off this little shindig. Well, hang on a second, David. All right, now, there we go. David, are you with me?
Yes, Brian, and happy Thanksgiving.
And a happy Thanksgiving to you, sir. So what's on your mind?
You'll be out next week.
Yes, I will.
Listen, I just wanted to say that during the past 2 weeks, I've noticed a real change in attitude in our country, and a very positive one toward our veterans and toward first responders and the military, that under this present administration, people have really shown support for our veterans, and I want to give another shout-out to them for Thanksgiving and appreciation. But it's a new day, and under this administration, our military and their families have been appreciated a lot more, and that's a great thing. And, Brian, it's a great day because Hillary is not president.
Right. Yeah, you're the guy, David. Well, and you're right about that. And we don't probably spend enough time thinking about what life would be like if the results in 2016 had been different. I mean, you're right, David, about the military, pride in the military, the honoring of the military. That would not be back. You wouldn't have a president that would be criticizing people that were kneeling in protest of the flag. You would have a president who would be praising that kind of lack of patriotism. So we can all be grateful that Hillary Clinton is not in the White House. All right, let's go to Mary in Texas. Mary, welcome. What's on your... I don't know what's going on with the clicker thing here. Mary, are you with me?
Yes.
Okay, what's on your mind?
All this irregular voting and, not meeting deadlines.
Yeah.
We lived in the state of Washington, and there the Republican won the governorship.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was in the 90s. And 3 times they called for a recount.
Yeah.
He still had it the first recount. He still had it the second recount. But on the third recount, the Democrat lady won the governorship.
Yeah, I remember that very well, Mary. They just kept finding ballots and finding votes until they got enough to overturn the election result and give it to the Democrat.
My husband said there was a movie called, I think he said, The Black Sheep.
Uh-huh.
And it was how they stole an election. And to me, our country has turned into lawlessness.
Yes.
When you don't meet a deadline, I mean, the law is the law. And then all these, ballots can be counted. And I can't understand why we don't go back to one-day vote. And we stopped voting absentee when we found our votes were being held in a warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know who has control of the warehouses?
Yeah, you don't know.
These absentee ballots. And we stopped way back then just going to the polls and, filling in the dot.
Yeah. All right, Mary, well, listen, I appreciate that. And I honestly believe, I've said it before, I will say it again, I believe what Mary and her husband do going to the polls on the election day, I think we ought to get away from this early voting. I think we ought to get away from all of this provisional ballot. Well, provisional ballots may be okay, but I'm talking about getting away from everybody voting early or voting by mail. I think that's got to go. We need to go back to the day when everybody showed up on the same day and cast a ballot in person. That's how you get rid of the voter fraud. Have everybody checks in, they're identified, they're verified, then they go vote. Everybody does it on the same day. The ballots are collected, they're counted, results are posted. You do it on the same day. This is a total nightmare in Florida. And it's only those 2 counties. All the other counties are doing fine, but Broward and Palm Beach County, major problems. And, of course, those are dominated by Democrats or heavily Democrat counties. And so it's Democrats that are mucking everything up in those 2 counties when it comes to the vote. So I'm with you, Mary. I think everybody ought to be voting on the same day. And I think we ought to have absentee voting for people that cannot make it. I want to be sure that our servicemen on deployment, that they get a chance to vote. I want to be sure if you have to be out of town on business, that you get a chance to vote. So I'm not saying we do away with absentee ballots, but you need to have a good reason to use the absentee ballot. So we want to make sure everybody is counted, but let's make sure everybody votes on the same day. All right, let's go to Mary in Kansas. Mary, welcome. What's on your mind?
Well, I was just going to ask about Tucker Carlson when his home was being attacked
Yes,
last week and everything.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering, with all the video and all the soundbite and all the evidence, it sure looks funny that the police just escorted him off and nobody was arrested. That is just beyond imagination. They could do that much, and no one person got put in jail. So I just think that shows another way that the United States is not doing the law right and everything.
Yeah, well, and you're right, Mary. We should see somebody going to jail in Florida because you had Democratic officials in Florida. They actually tampered with an official state document, the one about fixing ballots. They changed the date on it, so the people that got it thought they had 2 extra days to kind of deal with any problems on their ballot, which is completely illegal. The legal deadline is you got to fix your ballot by the day it's due, the election day, and nobody apparently is going to get in trouble for that. You got missing ballots. You've got miscounted ballots. I mean, the problems are legion in Broward and Palm Beach County, and I don't think anybody is going to be going to jail for that, but somebody should. All right, good call. Let's go to Wade in Iowa. Wade, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Yes, Brian, thank you very much for your show that keeps us believers on track. And several months ago, when the socialism thing was kind of a hot topic, I was seeking the Lord on how to pray against this, and that what came back to me was, Wade, pray against the spirit of division, because that's what's going on in this country, and it's going to take us down unless we get us back on track.
Yeah. Okay, very good, Wade. We do need to pray about that. And, speaking of socialism, I think I'll have a column running next week about the Pilgrims. When the Pilgrims came to New England, they tried socialism. That was the first form of economic structure that they tried. Everybody says, well, the problem with socialism, the right people haven't tried it yet. That's the problem. They've always got an excuse, and it's always that the right people haven't been in charge. Well, the Pilgrims were the right people, and they could not make it work. They did that. Look, everybody's going to go to work in the fields. Then we're going to get all the harvest, and we're going to put it all in one place. And then when somebody needs something, they come and get it from the store. And if they don't need anything, they don't get anything. And so these young men, the young strapping guys, were doing more work than anybody else, and there was no benefit to doing that. So they started getting lazy. Why should I go to work for somebody else's family? And the women in the Plymouth colony, they resented the fact that they had to wash the clothes of these young single guys. They had to not only launder their own family's clothes, but they had to wash other people's clothes. So you just got the bickering. There was resentment. There was that spirit of division you talk about, and that's what socialism breeds. It breeds resentment. It breeds division. It breeds jealousy. So what the Plymouth colony did is they struck on the solution is that they gave everybody in the colony their own piece of land that they could farm any way they wanted, and they could keep the produce. And you talk about productivity. You had wives going out with their little tiny kids at sunup to plant and to till and to furrow and to fertilize, because the family would benefit from all of their hard work. It wasn't going to be siphoned off to somebody else, and that was the solution. And it wasn't but a couple of years, and they had more stuff than they knew what to do with. They started selling it, and you had a prosperous, thriving little economy. So socialism is not the ticket. Now, speaking of election results, a couple of things I want to make you aware of that are going on. By the way, in Florida, Bill Nelson cannot possibly win the Florida recount. He can't. It's impossible. Politico has concluded that. CNN has run the numbers. These are left-leaning outfits. Bill Nelson ought to just give up because he cannot win. It's mathematically impossible. There simply are not enough ballots out there for the election results to be reversed. Same thing is true with Andrew Gillum and Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is the winner of that race for governor in Florida, and Rick Scott is going to be the winner of the Senate race. When they did that big recount, everybody, Bill Nelson's out. This is going to be the secret. This is going to be the ticket. First day, Bill Nelson lost 865 votes to Rick Scott, so it didn't exactly turn out the way that he thought. But listen to this before we go back to the phones. This is actually something to be concerned about. After the results on Tuesday, there will not be a single Republican, not one single solitary Republican from New England. The New England states have a total of 33 members of Congress. Not one of them, starting on January 3rd, will be a Republican. And you get out to California over on the left coast. In California, Democrats are going to hold a 44-9 edge in the House of Representatives. So it's, it's looking bleak for conservatives in different places Cindy Hyde-Smith in Mississippi is running into another problem. She said laws that make it a little more difficult, her words, for college students to vote are a great idea. She said this to a small crowd in Starkville, but you're not going to say anything in a Senate race that's going to be kept among us girls. So it got out. Now she says she was joking and the film was selectively edited, but I think more damage is being done. All right, let's go to Shane. Shane, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Thank you for taking my call, Brian. I could speak to a lot of everything. You're just great information, but I just wanted to shed a little bit of a glimmer of hope maybe on that first caller you had calling about Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
I think the DOJ is hauling her back in to further have her testify under oath concerning her emails. So you never know where it's going to go, but at least it hadn't gone away yet.
Yeah.
I did have one question concerning the news with the Catholic Church this week, concerning the priest and the accusations. I don't know who it was, but whoever the spokesperson, I guess they're waiting on the Vatican to make a decision about releasing records or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And whoever was talking about on the news bite was saying, they didn't really have to wait on anybody. They could just, open their filing cabinet, get those records, and walk right across the street and give it to their local police precinct. And it occurred to me, it dawned on me, I'm like, well, what is the deal there? I mean, where's the Department of Justice? I mean, do they not have the right to go in and with a warrant and say, we need those records? Are these people not covering up accusations, possible criminal charges? I mean, what's the deal with that?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that you're right. There are options that probably have not been tried. I think you're going to have some religious liberty issues. I mean, I could see the Catholic Church fighting in court on religious liberty grounds that their records, because it's a church and so forth, it ought to be protected. Now, I don't think you ought to allow protection to cover up this kind of activity. We're talking here about pedophilia. We're talking here about kids that have been abused, in some cases repeatedly, been scarred for life. We know who's done it. And this goes all the way back. I've said it before, but it goes all the way back to the 60s when the Roman Catholic Church could not get enough priests, so they started allowing homosexuals into their seminaries because the homosexuals didn't care about getting married and having kids. So they were available, and they needed bodies. They needed priests. They were running out of priests. That's why I think it's inevitable that the Roman Catholic Church is going to have to allow for a married priesthood. That's the only way they're going to keep this issue from resurfacing and being repeated. And the Pope has been trying to hold back the investigation and the exposure on pedophilia and homosexuality in the church. And so I think he's asked the American cardinals to hold off on the work they're doing. They're American cardinals, good for them, that are really trying to get at this thing, get at the root of it, and bring it to surface. But you're right, these are crimes. I mean, these are felony crimes. People can go away for life for doing what these men of the cloth have done, and you're exactly right. Each one of these needs to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and not have a hierarchy, not have authorities cover things up. And I know I am not a Roman Catholic myself, but I know I'm speaking for a lot of Roman Catholics that want this cleaned up just as much as you and I do. All right, Shane, appreciate the call. Let's drop down to Richard in Texas. Richard, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hello. I wanted to get comments on Abilio Acosta's his press pass being restored.
Yeah.
I think I heard a comment this morning on Fox, and there was some commenter that said, "How can it be that the president gets no input on who comes to his to his branch of the government's press meetings?"
Yeah. Well, you're exactly right, Richard. And the ruling today was fairly limited. It was on Fifth Amendment grounds that Jim Acosta had his press pass taken away from him without due process. Trust me, there is no due process. You act up, you act like a jerk like Jim Acosta did, there's no due process. You lose your press pass, period. End of story. You have no recourse. You want your press pass back, then beg forgiveness and promise never to do it again, and they might give it back to you. But the idea that there's some kind of constitutional right to a press pass is absurd. Be right back.
Hello, AFR listeners. My name is Vladimir. I received my Operation Christmas Child shoebox during a harsh winter in Ukraine, where I grew up. My favorite item was minty dental floss. I remember thinking, wow, I guess they have interesting candy in America. I want children to experience the same unconditional love I did at the age of 9. You can get involved by visiting afr.net and clicking on the Operation Christmas Child banner today.
The purpose of government is to secure God-given or inalienable rights to man.
America's premier historian, David Barton.
John Dickinson, who's also a signer of the Constitution, he said, an inalienable right is a right which God gave to you and which no inferior power has a right to take away.
Wall Builders Live captures the ideas of the Founding Fathers and then applies those ideas to the issues of today. Sunday morning at 11:30 Central on American Family Radio.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You know, the popularity of our spiritual heritage tours each year continues to grow. Those are our tours to Washington, D.C., Mount Vernon, Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown. Those are 2 separate trips, but a lot of folks go on both of them. But the popularity continues to grow, and we sell out 2 or 3 months in advance every year. So we're letting you know when our June and September tours are. Just go to our website, spiritualheritagetours.com. spiritualheritagetours.com. There's 2 tours. There's one to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, and then there's a separate trip, but they're back-to-back to Washington, D.C. and to George Washington's Mount Vernon. So, if you want to go on those tours with us, just go to the website, spiritualheritagetours.com, spiritualheritagetours.com, and check out all the info.
American Family Association President Tim Wildman.
Lynn Ingram and Jim Duncan, 2 Texans, support and believe in our ministry here at AFA and AFR.
We know more about the laundry business than anything else. We know a little bit about a lot of things, but we know a lot about the laundry and dry cleaning business.
They created a laundry detergent to sell to folks, and the proceeds come to support AFA and AFR.
We just want to be able to provide a product that can be used by AFA to support the ministry.
When you wash your family's clothes with Redeem Clean laundry detergent, you can take great satisfaction in knowing that you're supporting the vital work of the American Family Association. It's a unique way to increase your giving to AFA. For clean laundry and support of a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Learn more about the Redeem Clean products when you visit redeemclean.afastore.net.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Howdy, welcome back to Focal Point American Family Radio. Last 17 minutes of the fastest 60 minutes in American media. Jeff and I were talking over the break about Georgia, Stacey Abrams. She's also so far behind that it's impossible for her to catch up. She is now working with 36 lawyers, count them, 35, 36 lawyers, and they're trying to get the results of the Georgia election overturned so that they have to have a completely new election. This is something that has never, ever been tried before in American history. And she's so far behind that it's just ridiculous to think that there's any recount system that's going to help her. No matter how many votes they find, they just can't find enough votes to overturn the results. So anyway, that's going on out there in Georgia. But it looks like Bill Kemp is going to defeat Stacey Abrams, and I believe that's a contest for the governor of the state of Georgia. Okay, why don't we grab a soundbite while we are at it here? Let's go to Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson, pretty bright guy. You know, I've got a rule. I don't play conservative sound bites unless a conservative says something brilliant. A conservative, to get on Focal Point, has to say something brilliant. Now, a liberal to get on focal point only has to say something that's right. That's the only standard they have to meet. That's the lowest possible standard I can set for them.
Doesn't happen often.
Doesn't happen often. Or they have to say something right, or they have to say something that is just lunacy on steroids.
Oh.
But anyway, Tucker Carlson is a pretty bright guy, and he's talking here about the difference in the way Republicans and Democrats respond to losing elections. Clip 5.
Turns out that accepting outcomes you don't like is something only Republicans are required to do. Richard Nixon had an entire presidential election stolen from him by JFK in 1960. Liberals applauded when Nixon chose not to contest that election. But Democrats do not apply the same standard to themselves. When Democrats lose, there is always a reason that has nothing to do with alienating voters or getting fewer votes. It's Putin rigged the machines. The Macedonians hacked Facebook. Roger Stone sent unapproved tweets. Or the perennial favorite, you're racist. All of you who didn't vote for us, you're racist. You're immoral bigots. And of course, that's what we're hearing once again now. By the way, it's a lie. America is not a racist country. It's a kind and decent country. But the left hopes that by calling you enough names, they'll bully you into giving them more power. They always try that, and sometimes it works. It might work this time. The question is, what's the cost to the country?
And the cost is very, very high. Republicans typically do not have a lot of moxie in these situations. We need to find a little more backbone there. Here is Marco Rubio, clip 6. This is on Marco Rubio talking about what it means to be an American. We're talking a lot about American nationalism, what it is, what it isn't. And here's Marco Rubio. I think he is right on the money. Here's another conservative, gets on focal point because he says something brilliant.
What is our identity? Our identity is not a common race, ethnicity.
Right.
In fact, America is a de facto rejection of that. It is fundamentally premised on this notion. We are all children of God. We are born with God. We are all created equal by our Creator, and we are given equal rights to life, liberty, and to pursue happiness. That is our national identity. It is deeply rooted in morals and in values. It, in fact, explains everything this nation has done internationally and domestically. We should be proud of that identity. We should defend that national identity.
Marco Rubio is exactly right. Hungary's discovered this. Poland has discovered this. Hungary, Viktor Orban said, look, we're a Christian country. That's our heritage. We are not going to allow our heritage and our culture and the values that we derive from our Christian tradition, we're not going to allow Muslim immigrants to come in and corrupt that, to dilute that, to diminish that, to rip that cultural fabric. We are a Christian nation. We have been for hundreds and hundreds of years. We are proud of the fact that we are a Christian nation, and we are going to preserve our identity. So Marco Rubio is exactly right. Our identity as Americans is based on a shared set of ideals. It's based on the ideals that are found in the Constitution, that are found in the Declaration of Independence, that are found in Christianity, and that are found in the Ten Commandments. There is one true religion, it's Christianity. That is an American ideal. There's one moral standard for all people. It's found in the Ten Commandments. That's fundamentally American. That's what unites us as a people. All right, let's go to Frank in Kentucky. Frank, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hi, Brian.
Hey.
I'm going to say something brilliant, too.
All right.
Okay. You mentioned Bibi this past week.
Yes, I see a Bibi in Pakistan.
Bibi has a price on her head.
Yes.
So I wanted to say that why doesn't Bibi come here? And I wanted to also ask people that are the station, everybody's listening to the station here, call their senator or somebody and ask why does Bibi come here?
Yeah.
Instead of out of the country someplace.
Okay, well, that's a good question, Frank. And just to update folks, Frank's on top of this, but just to update the rest of you, she was acquitted, remember, by the Supreme Court in Pakistan. There was such an uprising that her defense attorney, the attorney that got her acquitted, he had to leave the country for his own safety. In America, we haven't gotten to the point where we go into people's houses yet and pull them out and beat them to death, but they do that in Muslim countries. So he split. He's gone. He's out of there. He's in the archives. And Asia Bibi was exonerated. She was acquitted. and she was going to leave the prison, and then they wouldn't let her. And part of it was for her own protection, because as Frank said, there's a price on her head. There are people out there that are looking for her. There are Muslims that want to literally cut her head off or beat her to death. She would never make it to the border. So the question of asylum has come up, and there are a number of European cities that have offered asylum to Asia Bibi. Interestingly enough, the UK is not one of them. If you can believe it, the United Kingdom will not grant asylum to Asia Bibi. They will not do it. You know the reason? They are afraid that it would, quote, cause unrest among certain sections of the community. What sections would that be? The Muslim sections. They have had such a foolish policy of virtually unrestricted, unrestrained Islamic immigration. They've got enough Muslims now in the UK. I mean, they are leading the world in knifing murders because of Muslims. They are leading the world in terms of acid attacks because of Muslims. And so they know they've got a huge problem. If they made place for Asia Bibi, her life would not be worth the proverbial plug nickel. The Muslims in the UK, the Muslims in Britain, practitioners of the religion of peace, they would track her down and kill her. But it wouldn't be a bad idea. I would actually encourage you to call the White House comment line, because so far President Trump, to my knowledge, has not offered her asylum. And I think that would be the next step for the President of the United States to offer her asylum. All right, good call, Frank. I appreciate that. Let's grab a call from Tim in Ohio. Tim, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian. I just wanted to point out, because we had so many Mexican nationals vote in this last election, that Trump's going to be able to use the foreign voter fraud executive order that he made, I think, in June of this year to investigate the election. So, and 45 days after the election, the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, and a few other agencies are going to report to Trump on all the fraud that went on. And I don't think, I think there's going to be a bunch of senators that aren't going to get seated.
Well, it'll be interesting to see that, Tim. You may be a little bit more aware of some of the facts on the ground than I am, but I think there's no question that there is a lot of voter fraud. There are a lot of illegal aliens that have been kind of snuck into the system and have been allowed to vote, have been recruited to vote. And that's really what this caravan is all about. This caravan isn't about compassion. Democrats are not doing this out of their compassion for these poor, downtrodden people. They're doing it because they want votes. This is about power. This is basically a coup d'etat. You know who they're trying to unseat? Who does all the power in our Constitution? Where is the seat of power according to the United States Constitution? First three words, we the people of the United States. That's what they don't like. That's what liberals don't like. They're trying to dethrone us. They're trying to take us down, rob us of our rightful constitutional authority by giving it to people that don't even have the right to be in this country, let alone vote. All right, thank you, Tim, for that call. That's very good. And we'll see what happens. We'll see if there is some effort on the part of the president to do something about this in a month and a half. All right, Sandy in Mississippi, welcome. What's on your mind?
Well, I just wanted to say something about the caravan and the illegal aliens.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, they can be stopped, and they should be stopped. Now, I have sympathy for people who are hungry and who have no way to better themselves, but you don't just barge in to a country, and that's what they're doing. They're attempting to barge in, and they're attempting to take over the vote. They're attempting to vote and to obtain jobs, etc., etc. But there's a right way to do anything, and there's a wrong way. And they're bullies. They're all just bullies.
Yeah. All right, and you are correct about this. And let's grab clip number 2, Jeff, while we're there. This is Amy Horowitz. He's a documentary filmmaker. He embedded himself in the caravan and has produced a documentary on this. And here he is. Here's an excerpt from the documentary where he actually talks to members of the caravan I will have to tell you what they say because it has to be translated, but let's listen.
Despite the framing of the caravan as being full of women and children, the reality on the ground is quite different. Approximately 90 to 95% of the migrants were male. The major narrative being pushed by the press has been that the migrants are leaving Honduras because they are escaping extreme violence and that their lives are under constant threat, setting up the strategy that they would be able to enter the U.S. by asking for asylum. So I started by asking them a simple question. Why are you coming to America?
Bueno, voy buscando una mejor vida económica.
Vine a trabajar allí a Estados Unidos. A ver si podemos trabajar allá porque en Honduras no hay trabajo.
What they said, why are you coming to America? The first guy says, I'm looking for a better life. It's economic. It's not asylum. It's not fleeing violence or persecution. And economic reasons is not a valid basis. It's not a legal basis to get asylum. You can't get refuge in the United States because you want to work. That's not a valid lesson. So the second guy says, I wish to get there and work there. Third guy says, being in Honduras, there are no jobs. So their motive clearly economic. They're not fleeing oppression. They're not downtrodden people that are fleeing persecution, can't go back to their home country because they would run into persecution. They just want jobs. Now, clip number 3, this is from the same documentary, talking about the narrative that the mainstream media is trying to paint. Let's listen.
One of the lies, the fake news, if you will, that the mainstream media is trying to propagate is the fact that this is all this weird, this organic thing, and all the water and the food and the medicine all dropped from manna from heaven. It's baloney. It's all highly organized. It's paid for by a number of organizations. We don't know exactly where the money is coming from. We do know that Pueblo Sin Frontera, which is the main group which is organized this caravan, has a couple of front organizations in the United States, and the money is flowing from them to Pueblo Sin Fronteras. We know there are some leftist groups. I know it's forbidden to say that Soros is part of it, but Soros has in fact funded at least some of those groups in the past. So we don't know where the money is exactly coming from. We know it's not coming from Honduras.
Not coming from Honduras. He's right. It's got to be coming from Soros if you trace it back far enough. All right, let's try if we can wedge in a call or two before we are done. Let's go to Britton in Nevada. Britton, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Well, let's start with the Acosta guy. Now, we got to take his joker back. Fine, put him back in the room on a dunce stool.
Now, who are you talking about?
The Acosta.
Are you talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
No, I'm talking about the reporter guy from CNN.
Jim Acosta. Yeah. Well, you know what the White House could always do? I mean, the White House is going to have the last word on this. Because what the White House could do is just stop having White House briefings. Then what are you going to do, Jim Acosta? You're going to go to court and try to get a judge to order them to have White House briefings? It doesn't work that way. And again, this is ridiculous. It's absurd for this judge even to entertain this because there simply is no constitutional right to get a press pass. And on top of that, 60 people from CNN already have a hard press pass. Jim Acosta just doesn't want to be left out. All right, last call of the day. Let's go to Becky, Louisiana. Becky, you got 30 seconds. Hit me with your best shot.
Thank you for your prayers. Look out, we're going to have a bunch of Louisiana voters, like when we had, some real corruptions here. And I say, look out, McConnell and Flake. They are working against the will of the people. Give us our judges.
Yeah. Well, you, Becky, are from Huey P. Long Country, so you would know all about election skullduggery. You know, and Jeff Flake, Becky's right. Jeff Flake is saying, I'm going to block every judge that President Trump has in the pipeline if I don't get this legislation to the Senate floor that will keep the Mueller investigation from being tampered with. So that shows you how petty Jeff Flake is willing to be. Sooner he's gone, the better we like it. Remember, no overtime today. Have a great weekend. See you on Monday.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
American Family Association. We're here to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of American culture. Whether it's praying, signing a petition, or emailing leaders, your involvement is needed every day.